Good morning, everybody. This is Phelan with the Taylorsville Road Church of Christ. I'm here this morning to give you, or this afternoon, to offer you your daily dose of encouragement on this morning. I'm very privileged and excited to do this again. I'm starting back after a long hiatus of not doing these videos. Eric had taken over for me, and I'm very appreciative for that. But now I want to help kind of take off the load by stepping in for some time and giving you guys another dose of encouragement from my perspective based on God's word. And so again, I hope you guys can hear me, and if you can't, please let me know, chime in, comment. But what we want to talk about this morning is going to be based on the text from Genesis chapter 17. And we will be speaking on trusting God. We'll be speaking on trusting God's might. Because oftentimes, as Christians, as believers, we seem to lose sight and faith in God's might. We go throughout our journey, our day-to-day, and we encounter a lot of difficulties. We encounter a lot of Red Seas, a lot of Pharaoh's armies, and we think that there is no way out of whatever bad or difficult situation that we might be in. And so I want to kind of reaffirm in God's defense His might. And I want you to understand that whatever you're going through, whatever problem you're seeking an answer to, or a question you're seeking an answer to, we want you to know that God can achieve His will for your life. And God will fulfill the desires of your heart if you are abiding in His will. So let us go ahead and turn our Bibles over to Genesis chapter 17. And if you're familiar with the account, we are here going to be talking about Abram and Sarai, otherwise known as Abraham and Sarah, as we are more familiar with. So let's go ahead and read Genesis 17 and verse 17. Then I'll give you some background and we'll give some commentary on it. So it says, Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And then we jump down to chapter 18, verse 12, and we see that Sarah laughs also at this. It says, Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And then God's response to this was, Is anything too hard for the Lord? And then it finishes off by saying, At the appointed time, I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Now, a little bit of background. Chapter 16 actually introduces us to the problem that Abraham and Sarah had faced when they were called by different names. Abram and Sarai. Again, Abram meaning exalted father, Sarai meaning princess. And now at the age of 86, in this chapter, at the age of 86, Abram was still able to produce children. If you recall, he produced a child with his maidservant Hagar, and that child was Ishmael. And she had born him a child, and in their attempt, in Abram and Sarah's attempt to bring about a child on their own, they had figured this was God's will. They presumed that this is God's will. This is how we're going to have a child. We can't have a child of our own. And so they decided to try to bear a child through Hagar, the maidservant. Now, it's obvious to us that God was aware of this problem, especially when we realize that God had heard the cries of Hagar, and when Sarah had dismissed Hagar from their camp, and she had become a refugee, her and her newborn. And well, not the newborn, but the newborn Ishmael hadn't been born yet, but Hagar had been dismissed. So God had told Abram of his plans to make him a father of many nations. He had told of Sarah becoming a mother of nations, and they both laughed at this idea. In essence, they both asked, how could this be? How could this be? And aren't we like that at times also? We face very challenging concepts and ideas, and things that puzzle us sometimes, and we say there's no way out of this. How can anything better come? And we just kind of lose faith to a degree, if we're honest. But we have to realize that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so if he's done a great thing in the past, he can do a great thing today, and he can do the same tomorrow. If he has the power to save our souls, he has the power to deliver us from our earthly troubles. But I want to give you a great example of a figure who trusted in God, and this man is David, King David. Acts chapter 13 verse 22 says, and when he had removed him, he raised up to them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, which shall fulfill all my will. Now David was a man that truly trusted in God, and David was, yes, an imperfect man, but he had full trust in God. Now if we turn over to 1 Samuel, we turn over to 1 Samuel chapter 17. We turn over to 1 Samuel chapter 17. We see the event where Saul and the Israelites were about to go against the Philistines, and the Philistines had presented Goliath, their warrior champion, and the Israelites had become afraid because they had no one that could really go against this Goliath, this Philistine champion. And the chapter introduces David, a little shepherd boy who so happened to be come around during this time, and he decided, because of the courage that he had in his heart, that he wanted to take on the Goliath champion. And what was the result? He won that battle. David trusted God to deliver him from the hands of the Philistine. And we can look at a couple verses from 2 Kings chapter 18 verses 5 through 7, but let's just to kind of give you a picture of what's well, I won't say a picture, but just to kind of summarize it, we're just going to say that these men have put their trust in God, and putting their trust in God has been able to elevate them among men. So, well, 2 Kings 18 is actually about David. It's actually about David. It speaks of David as David put his trust in God. And so then we go over to Psalms 41. Let's look at Psalms 41 verse 11. Psalm 41 verse 11. Let's see what the psalmist says. In Psalms 41 verse 11, it says, by this I know that you are well pleased with me, because my enemy does not triumph over me. And so we understand that we recognize God's favor, because when we are faced with challenges and we're faced with our enemies and temptation and sin, when we realize that we have triumphed over those things, we recognize that God's might is at work and God is still powerful. And because we cannot subdue these things on our own, it's only through God's Spirit. Psalms 4 and 5 helps us to recognize two two important things, and these things we should always remember, that we're required of two things: to offer sacrifices, righteous sacrifices to the Lord, and to put all of our trust in Him. Psalms 118, verse 8 through 9, says, "It's better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man." It's better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. Basically, what I'm saying here is, or what the word is saying here is, we're going to put our trust in someone or something. And if we're going to do that, it needs to be in the right thing. It needs to be in God. It needs to be in His Word. And so let us always remember that we can continue to have trust in God, because God can always do what He promises. And God will always do what He promises. God is faithful, and God is just. God is merciful, and God is loving. And we always want to remember that if we're going to put our trust in someone or something, which we will, it needs to be in the right place. And let that be God, and let that be in His Word. So I thank you guys for today's message, for tuning in, for listening. Please, like these videos, share these videos, comment on these videos, and let us continue to help get the word out to the world, to the lost, and let us continue to shine light in the dark world that we're in. And I pray that you have a blessed day, and that you move on in happiness. Thank you guys for tuning in.